You okay? Good. All right, we're about 2 minutes in. We'll go ahead and get started. I'm Andrea Hayes. I think I've met a lot of you. One of our leads here of the business applications team here at SVA. I'm really excited to welcome you guys to our first webinar. Starting today, we'll be providing these webinars each month. And we'll basically go through different ways to optimize and expand your use of Acumatica. Today we'll provide just a broad overview of some tools that you can use to quickly find data out of Acumatica. That request is in high demand. Next month, our webinar will focus on top features of the newer versions of 2021 R2. In all these sessions, the content that we prepare, it will have varying levels of sophistication. So some of the content you'll be able to use out of the gate. Others are going to be a little bit more technical. In all cases, we just want to show you what the tool can do, want to show you the art of the possible. And you also may need some assistance or some of our help to execute other aspects of what we show. Where you have questions, we'll show this at the end. Please do email our tech support line to ask those questions. I've also included on this slide all of our emails as well, so you can follow up with me, you can follow up with Maddie as well. We have a lot of content in the pipeline. Some of it will hint at today, and others will need a deeper dive as well. So if you have questions, please do email. Each session, we have about 20 minutes of total content, and the remaining time is for Q&A. So we do ask you to please submit your questions to the Zoom chat window, and Tanya, our customer success manager, will help curate those questions, and we'll go through those at the end of the 20 minutes. All right, and with that, I'll hand it over to Maddie to get started with our content.
All right, thank you, Andrea. All right, so just some housekeeping. Feel free to actually follow along today. If you'd like to open up your own Acumatica, some of the tools we'll be going through are things that you can actually replicate in your own version of Acumatica. If you have a pilot and test environment, that'd be the best place to do it. So today's theme is for the non-technical user. Now, we did that really intentionally, and the purpose of that is we wanted to make data easy to access for users who don't necessarily have a specialty in data science, really familiar with SQL database, and really give that non-technical user the ability to access data quickly using some of these themes that we'll be talking about today. So the first theme is on generic inquiry sorting and filtering. Now, why we wanted to present that is it really allows you to personalize your data, take advantage of tools really at the tip of your fingers using just the out-of-the-box generic inquiries that you already have. I'll give you a little bit of a sneak peek into potentially a future session on custom fields. So that'll be part of our first topic, generic inquiry sorting and filtering. Our second topic, I'll give you a sneak peek into the refresh option that you have within Excel. Now, this tool is really valuable for users who have really high ability within Excel, and it allows you to run some pivots and charts within the Excel tool while automatically refreshing data from Acumatica. So you're working with the latest and greatest updates to Acumatica. For example, we'll go through a sales order option. Section number 3 of our webinar today is going to be a little bit higher technicality, but still very accessible to any user. This is called the navigation panel. And navigation panels are a fantastic way to gather data all in the same place. So within Acumatica, there's a common theme. There's a lot of relationships among documents. Specifically, we're going to take a look at the customer's generic inquiry. And what you'll see is there are a lot of pieces within Acumatica that relate to customers, like sales orders and contacts and the customer card itself. So how do you gather all of that and put it in the same place for easy access? All right, so now we'll get started. Here is my environment of Acumatica. If you'd like to, during the session, you can actually open up your own Acumatica and follow along. So the first section we're going to be going through is on filtering. So lots of cool options within any generic inquiry in Acumatica. What I mean by generic inquiry is kind of a data jargon tool term for what is kind of an Excel spreadsheet. So you'll see columns of data. Each of those columns has pieces of information, like, for example, date, order number. That's what you'd see within sales orders. But for example, customers, which we'll look at later, is also a generic inquiry. So that's going to have things like customer ID and where the customer is located. So that's what a generic inquiry is. Within our generic inquiries, there are a lot of options for customization. One of the easiest things you can do is actually drag and drop your column headers to change the order of those column headers. So for example, let's say I want to see order number. I'd like to see that further over to the right after my status. So when I have my cup of coffee in the morning, the first thing I always like to look at is status. I want to see that first. So this drag and drop option is available. And when you click and hold the column header, you can see these arrows follow me along the line. So I can put this column anywhere within the lineup, and I can even put it back where we started at the beginning here. Another cool thing you can do is you can get rid of column headers that you don't need. And you can also add additional column headers. So in this button here in the very upper left-hand corner, this is going to be your column configuration. Now, for example, let's say all of my sales orders are in US dollars. For the 0.001% of my sales orders that aren't, that's not relevant for me. We're going to get rid of currency. So if I say OK here, what you'll see is this currency column just disappeared. Then when I say fit to screen, the information that I have better fits my computer screen. It's less busy, and I'm just looking at the information that's important. If I ever change my mind, I can always go back to that column configuration and put currency back on there. You'll also see a list of items that are not naturally on the generic inquiry. So for example, if I wanted to add description, I could add the description of the sales order, add that to the end, and then determine where the best place to put this is. All right, so that is our column configuration. The next section is on filtering. So you may already know that no matter which column header you click on, you get filtering options. So, and those filtering options will change depending on what kind of data is in that column. So for example, when I hit the status dropdown, it's going to give me the statuses to choose from. So these are my filters. With dates, I can actually enter in the dates, and we'll go through an example of that. With values, these are going to be dollar values, and you can enter from and to values. So if I hit cancel here, one thing that I might be interested in when I first look at the sales orders generic inquiry is a more specific filter, right? So you can see that I'm looking at almost 5,000 sales orders. Likely, what I want to do is actually look at a smaller number. So we're going to look at our status dropdown, and I'm going to say clear all. The only status that we're interested in looking at is open sales orders. So those are going to be most relevant to my particular questions. We'll say open sales orders here. And as you can see, the number of sales orders has gone down from almost 5,000 to just under 500. So we're already looking at a more specific section of our data. Another cool thing you can do is with dates. Now, if you're familiar with a more traditional tool like Excel, you're probably familiar with the between status. So you could say from, and then you could hard code the dates like this. You could say, for example, I want to look at the month of September sales orders. And then you hard code those dates and you say, okay, 9/1 to 9/30. The really cool thing that you can do with Acumatica, particularly related to dates, is you can set up what we call flexible parameters. So if you use this dropdown in the right side of this filter here, so you say is between, and then you use this dropdown. On the right here, you're going to see a list of flexible parameter options. So for example, if I want to say week start and week end, the cool thing that this will do for me is it will change the data that I'm looking at depending on what week I'm in. So when I set up this filter, it's going to be waiting for me on Monday morning with fresh data for the new week. So we'll say weekend. All right. The next thing I want to filter on, and like I said, this is going to be a sneak peek to one of our future webinar sessions, is I've set up a user-defined field on my customer. So that is allowing me to connect my sales orders, which are numbered here, to the region of the customer. So this is not out of the box. This is something I've added, but I wanted to show it to you anyway. If you right click on a value anywhere within your generic inquiry, you can get a filter by the cell value. And this allows you to perform a pivot against a certain characteristic. So if we're thinking about this from a sales order perspective, the cool thing that you could start to do here, right, is from a sales management perspective, you could target the West Coast as an area where you want to expand your customer base. And you could track sales orders within this certain region and really keep a close eye on those sales orders. So this is an example of how a filter, in comparison to the broader, longer list of almost 5,000 sales orders, can really provide business value. So great, we have our filters set up. If you're following along at home, you want to set up a few filters yourself, change around the order, try all of that. Then you can actually save this filter. So in the upper right-hand corner, there's this little floppy disk save option. So if you save here, then you can actually assign a filter name. So we'll say sales open sales orders on the West Coast region. Then we're going to make this a shared configuration. Now, what a shared configuration does is when I hit OK here, this filter is going to be available to all of my colleagues. So anyone with access to the sales orders generic inquiry can now access the filter that I've set up because it's a shared filter. Additionally, when I log back out and log back in, because this is a saved filter, this is going to be saved for me and ready to go the next time I log in. We haven't gotten rid of the main sales orders page, so you can still go back to your main sales orders page, see any sales order you like. So this is an unfiltered version. This filter is now set up for easy access. So that concludes our filter section of today's webinar. The next section is going to be on the Excel data refresh. So in this spreadsheet here, I have an Excel Acumatica connection set up. If you have more questions about how to set that up, feel free to contact us at technicalsupport@svaconsulting.com, and we can point you towards some resources to get this set up for the first time. After you set up the initial connection, there's only need to set that up once, and then you can go to refresh, and you can say refresh all underneath the data tab here. And the cool thing that this will start doing is this is my sales orders list. I will begin to see new sales orders come into my Excel as I'm creating them. So I'm getting fresh data. And already with the spreadsheet, you're seeing some really cool opportunities for analysis. One, we're seeing the date, right? So we could begin to track sales orders over time, sales volume, which direction are things trending. We can see the order totals, so we can see the value of those sales orders. We can see the customer name, so we can track against which customers are, increasing their sales orders, which ones are going down, etc. So once we have this connection yet, this isn't quite the analysis that you want to do, but you can easily take this information into a pivot or a chart. In this example, I spun up this chart, just quick 10 minutes of work. I connected this to the spreadsheet that we have here, sales orders in September. And this is now going to change every time I hit refresh, every time there's a new sales order. So what does that look like? I have this connection set up to add a new sales order if that sales order is within September. So it's more specific. We're not loading every sales order in the system, just those in September. So let's test that out. If we go back to our Acumatica, let's copy and paste the most recent sales order. So we can see the most recent sales order on our list here ends in 90. We're going to create a new one. So we'll just go in our 5890 sales order here. We're going to cheat a little bit today, and we're just going to copy and paste this sales order. And once I save, we have our brand new sales order. So this is sales order 5891. We can see that it's $2,000. We can see that it's associated with a customer and a date. All right. So when I hit refresh on my Excel spreadsheet, this new sales order should come through. So when I go back to my Excel spreadsheet here, We'll go to the data tab and we'll go to refresh all. If you use this drop down here, we'll say refresh all. It'll take just a minute, usually 30 to 45 seconds here. And now we have our new sales order. So this could obviously be brought in as in mass. You maybe do this once every couple days and bring in 10 to 20 sales orders at once. Couple cool things that have come in here. Again, you can get that date, sales order totals, which customers those are connected to. We could even make just a really small adjustment and even get that user-defined field that we were looking at earlier. So on our sales order, we could even think about bringing in this region into our Excel, and then we could really get going with pivot analysis, sales orders over time, some really cool options here. So not just this chart, you could be even more creative than this with the Excel connection. All right, so that concludes our Excel connection section of the webinar. The next topic that I want to take you through is the navigation panel. So this is an example of a navigation panel. Right now, you're not seeing anything fancy. This is a direct copy and paste of the existing customer out of the box generic inquiry. So all you're seeing here are customer IDs, customer names, customer classes, where that customer is located. If you hit this hyperlink here, you could even click into Alta Ace and get some more information on it. So this is the default out of the box customer inquiry. Now, what we've done with the navigation panel is I did a quick rename. I can show you how to do that rename. And we've added connected documents. So in our navigation panel here on the upper right, if you use this caret, you can see related documents in Acumatica. Now, each one of these tabs here is a separate navigation panel, bringing another piece of information related to the customer and showing it to you on the right here. So in this example here, we're showing contacts. So contacts are beneath customers. What it's doing is exposing any contacts related to Alta Ace based on the customer account ID. So the cool thing that the nav panel does is when I click on new customers, you're going to see a new list of contacts depending on which customer that is. So really cool application here. I could be, a sales representative looking at the customer view, and I want to pull up a phone number and an email address quickly. This is the perfect way to do that. You can also connect the customer card itself. So for example, if I just wanted a bigger version, a quick access version of my customer card, I could access this here and see quickly some of the financial information, where they're located, etc. Another really cool example and thing you can do with navigation panels, and we're actually going to go through this example today, so I'll show you how to set this up, but you can connect a whole dashboard to another generic inquiry. So in this example, we've connected sales orders, and we've connected that back to our customer. So depending on which customer here I have selected, you can see what sales orders are in process. Now, when we talk about the 360 customer view, this comes in handy a lot because you can see if anything's shipping, anything in trouble. If you have a couple late orders for a customer, this is something that could help you while you're on the phone with them. You could maybe communicate to them when it's scheduled. So lots of options with this kind of view. We've also connected this up to invoices. You can see invoices related to each customer. If you have the CRM module, you could connect opportunities. You can see which opportunities are out there. What kind of sales relationship do we have with this customer? Things like that. You can also connect quotes and cases. So for example, if I were on the phone with this customer, I'd be able to see, they have 3 cases this month. Let's maybe take a look at what those have been as context for the relationship. All right. So the other really cool thing with nav panels is, this is a very customer focused example. You're going to have a lot of options no matter which generic inquiry you're working with. You could have the same concept with projects or invoices and memos. You could do the same thing with journal transactions if you wanted to do a more accounting based navigation panel. And it can also be used for a variety of purposes and interest levels. So from a logistics perspective, I could be managing shipments and making sure nothing gets stuck in the process. From an executive level, I could be watching sales orders as they trend up and down, with certain customer segments. So lots of purposes and options with the navigation panel. So with the setup here, the first thing I'd recommend doing is selecting your base generic inquiry. So in our case, it's going to be customers. The first step you'll need to do is make sure that you have the customizer user role. If you have any questions on how to get that for yourself, don't hesitate to reach out. But the first step is we're going to go in the upper right-hand corner here and then say edit generic inquiry. Once we edit our generic inquiry, we don't want to edit the out-of-the-box generic inquiry. What we want to edit is a copy of that. The reason for that is we don't want to make any changes. We can't reverse to the actual customer list. It's easy to make a mistake. If you're using a copied version, it's real easy to just start over and try something again. So with this clipboard here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the base generic inquiry that we want to use, and we're going to create a new one. So we'll copy here. And then we'll create new. Assign it a title and then tab. And then we're going to hit this clipboard here and then say paste. All right. To start, I'd recommend unselecting the make visible on UI. So we're going to unselect that and save. All right. So the really cool thing about navigation panels is the generic inquiry page can be a little bit intimidating. There's a lot of options here, and it relates a little bit to the data science element of Acumatica, but setting up a navigation panel is really easy. So the only tab you need to use is navigation. So we're just going to use this navigation tab. All right, so our first step is to select the first navigation panel. So the one we're going to start with, if we go to my 360 customer view here, is we're going to start with the most basic example. We're just going to connect the customer card directly to the customer GI. So all we're doing is we're connecting customer to customer. So if we go to our generic inquiry here, the navigation target is the thing you're connecting. So in our case, that's going to be the customer GI. In that other example, if you wanted the sales dashboard to show up, you'd select the sales dashboard. So this is the information that you want to show up when you open the panel. So we're going to go ahead and plus here. And then this is just a type search. So we'll say customer here. All right. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky. You can see that we have 3 customers options. Now, I would recommend choosing the one in the workspace that you recognize. So when I go to customers, I typically open the receivables module, and then I go underneath the profiles heading. So I'm going to select the customers that has the workspace and category that I recognize. So I'm going to double click that. All right, so this is our thing that we are connecting. The navigation parameters is the connection point. So when I change the customer that I have selected, Acumatica needs some information to know what it should show on the navigation panel. In this case, we're going to connect by account code. So if the account code matches that customer, we want Acumatica to show it. So we'll use this dropdown here and select account code. In general, you want your parameter to exactly match what your field is. So I'm just going to search account code here, and we can select customer account code. All right. Anytime you make a change to a generic inquiry, I always recommend checking your work. You can hit the View Inquiry button, and then you can see the changes that you have made on your generic inquiry. Before we view, we actually want to change the window mode. So if we use this double click here, this side panel, that's the option that's going to create the panel effect that we were looking at. All right. So we'll save. After we have side panel selected, it's going to give us an icon option. So this icon dropdown controls what the icon looks like on the nav panel. So in our 360 customer view example, you would be able to see these icons here. So this, this circle for sales orders and then dollar values, that's what the icon controls. So if we use this dropdown here, you can search, for example, person, you could search dollar value, anything like that. I think in our case, I'm going to use a person outline. Say okay here. And now we view our work. All right, so we have our side panel. Now we're going to test it. So if our side panel works correctly, what should happen is if I change my customer selection, the information here along the right should change. So I'm going to close this out really quick and let it load. All right, so if I have Alt A selected, we're seeing the right information. Let's test ABC Capital. So if I have that selected, it changes. Pass. Our navigation panel works. The next thing we want to set up is a dashboard connection. So on the 360 customer view, this one's the one that's built out. You can see that we have a sales orders dashboard connected. So this is going to be really similar to the customer one we just connected. So it's still going to use that account code. It's just going to be slightly different because it'll be a dashboard. So if we go back to our generic inquiry, we're still on the 360 customer view. So this is our brand new GI. We're underneath the navigation tab. Now we're ready to set up. So we have our customers one tested, and we just want to create a new panel. So we're going to add a new navigation target. Our new navigation target is going to be the sales orders dashboard. So I'm going to use this drop down here, and I'm just going to type in sales orders. All right. So there's a lot of options within sales orders in the system. So I might have to do just a little bit of searching to find the one that I'm looking for. All right. So this sales orders dashboard is the one that I recognize. It's in the sales orders transactions category. It also says DB at the end, which is another helpful hint that this one is a dashboard, and it's most likely the one that I'm looking for. So I'm going to double click on this. We're going to follow the same process that we did before. We're going to use this dropdown and select side panel. And then save. All right. After we've selected our side panel, you can select an icon. So for example, for sales orders, we might say target or dollar value. So you could say $+ here because of its sales. Now that we have our connection made, we need to tell Acumatica how to connect sales orders to the customer GI. And the way we're going to do that is via account code. So customers have a unique account code. Sales orders are connected to customers, and that's how we're going to make the connection. So if we use the plus here, we're going to have one drop-down option. So it looks like it's suggesting that we connect based on customer account ID. So we're going to select that option. The next selection is our parameter, and we're actually going to make the same connection that we made before. So we're going to use customer account code and then save. All right, so we have our generic inquiry. Here's our second nav panel. And the final step is to test the inquiry. Make sure everything's connected correctly and we're seeing the changes that we expect. All right, I'm going to try reloading that one more time.
Hey, Maddie, it's Tim Hansen, and I'm going to help you out a bit here, obviously, while you're waiting for that screen to refresh.
Mm-hmm.
Take advantage of this time. There's a couple of questions in the chat that I wanted to maybe try to address. One is some of the functionality that Maddie is showing today is is actually going to maybe not be in everybody's version. So side panels and even some of the dashboard widgets are part of the new functionality that Acumatica adds throughout periodic releases. So if you're not seeing side panels or navigation when you go to your generic inquiry, it's simply just a matter of getting onto that roadmap and helping as we migrate up forward to your newest version. You'll get that functionality.
That's a good addition. Thank you, Tim. So I apologize. It looks like I can't show you what the sales orders connection looks like in the one we just made. However, I can show you the generic inquiry we were looking at earlier. And this is what the connection would look like. So all we've done is we've connected a sales order dashboard to the customer GI. And what it's going to do is it'll change the sales order information that we're looking at, depending on which customer we have selected. So if I wanted to see ABC Studios, we would load this information in the sales order section. All right. So the main thing that I want you to take away from this particular demo is lots of information can be connected here. We went through a very customer specific example. So, sales order, CRM focus, but this concept can be applied really broadly as well. If you work with projects or core accounting, even inventory management, if you have inventory IDs that you want to connect to different types of documents within the system, there's a lot of really cool application within navigation panels. And the general idea is getting more information all in the same place that's easy to access. All right. So with that, I think we'll stop for questions. The first thing I'll do is read through the comments section here. It looks like there was, go ahead.
Yeah, so Maddie, I think the remaining question we have for right now is on the Excel link. Is it possible to link reports to Excel, like your P&L and balance sheets, so your financial statements?
That's a good question. To my knowledge, the things that you can export into Excel have to be generic inquiries. So think, sales orders, you could export journal transactions directly, any transactions page itself. I believe unless it's in a GI, you wouldn't be able to export. We could do a pretty easy custom generic inquiry to set something like that up if you'd be interested.
Let me help you there too, Maddie. So I think you're exactly correct. Generic inquiries are the easiest to export to Excel with the refresh capability. I think that's the key. Standard financial statements done through what Acumatica calls their analytical report manager, or ARM. Those financial reports can also be exported to Excel, but they're not dynamic for dynamic refresh. So the classic method there is to use a generic inquiry from a comparable trial balance perspective or something else. That data could indeed be refreshed through Excel.
All right.
So we have one more question. Can you point us to where we can learn more about the Excel connection?
Yeah, I can take that one too. There's quite a bit of documentation in the help system actually on Excel. So if you do search in the help system on Excel, it does talk how you export those transactions. Frankly, there's a lot of functionality in standard Acumatica that you wouldn't necessarily need Excel for anymore. Sorting columns, filtering data, even doing what we call conditional formatting. That functionality is something most people have used Excel for. Acumatica has that. In one of our future webinars, we'll highlight that type of capability in a generic inquiry. So you really have to be a pretty strong power user of Excel to take advantage of that. But I would look through the help system. There's a lot of documentation. And then I think we have a caution on this, just as you work through Excel compared to Acumatica, make sure we understand the security model that's in place for Excel. Make sure we understand the security roles that go into generic inquiries. Again, in our 20 minutes of content or 30 minutes of content today, we don't have time to go through all of that, but we'll start narrowing in on some of these areas to help provide better guidance to optimize your system in future webinars as well. Tanya, were there other questions through the chat?
I don't see any other questions as of now that are unanswered. Anybody has any additional questions, feel free to post them in the last couple of minutes here. We do have one more that just came in. So outside of general inquiries, can you customize the default filters like on the approved bills for payments?
No, so I think I know what that request is. We have set up custom GIs for the approvals map before. Those are pretty easy to set up, so that would be an option. Jim, do you have anything to add there? Go for it.
Yeah, I think this is one of those areas where there are generic inquiries, and then many screens in Acumatica use the inquiry engine basically, but they're not built through generic inquiries. On either of those, the filter icon on the right side of the screen is always available, and you typically can save those filters. Best example of that might be if you were on the sales order screen typically, and the line items themselves, you can often filter on those, accounts payable, invoice, and adjustments. Many of those have the filter icon on them. Some don't. The one you're referencing, approved bills for payment, may be one that currently doesn't have that inquiry engine as part of it. In that case, what Maddie described is an option for us, which is we can build an alternative inquiry using the generic inquiry tool to provide the filtering.
Any last questions here? And feel free, by the way, to email myself if you have additional follow-up questions, and we'll get some answers provided. But I did want to remind you as we kind of wrap up to look for, as was mentioned as we started this, one of our first webinars on Acumatica, want to remind you that next month we do want to review the Acumatica 2021 R2 features. That version is set to release, I believe, between now and next week. So we're pretty excited about that. So make sure to watch for that. And then if you do have any questions or you need some assistance regarding what we covered today, feel free to just go ahead and email technicalsupport@svaconsulting.com. If you put webinar in the title, we'll know that you're looking for some assistance, and you know, you're not broken today, right? So feel free to email us. And with that, since we have no other questions, we'll wrap it up. And I'd like to, yep, go ahead.
I do want to interject simply because I do have an update on the approved bills for payments question.
Oh, awesome.
While we were talking, I just popped Acumatica open. Whomever asked that question, this one is a little more confusing where the icon is, but when you look at that screen, there is a filter icon next to the Excel button. And if you actually push that filter icon, and I don't know, Maddie, whether you have your Acumatica still open, you might be able to demonstrate that really quickly. That filter icon is a bit more of an advanced way, but it does the same functionality in that it allows you to save any filter you would create. Yeah, so Maddie has that. Oops, Maddie's got a lot of things going on there, but that's okay, Maddie. I'm putting you on the spot. There you go. Yeah, that's okay. We can wrap that up, but whomever asked that question, the approved bills, there it is. So Maddie has the filter button. So if you see the filter icon up in the top right there, yep. And that will allow you to add a filter and save it as well. You can certainly do it that way. Thank you, Tanya. Andrea, were you going to wrap up for us?
I think that we are good. I want to thank everybody for joining us though today, and our subject matter experts. Tim, thank you for chiming in. You've been working with Acumatica for apparently years. Maddie, you're doing great. Andrea, thank you. And again, thanks to all of our clients that attended today. We look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.